After many years of marriage, the woman finally became independent. She bought herself a cozy little house by the sea, her own place of peace and freedom. But her ex-husband and his mother didn't seem to understand that things had changed. They called her and said, "We'll arrive on Friday. Cook us dinner." They still acted like they owned her life and her home. Hello, dear listeners. Welcome to my channel. Today I have a new and interesting story for you. Enjoy. Nina Belokoneva was sitting in the kitchen of her small rented apartment, watching her husband Ruslan eat his breakfast. Every bite he took felt like a reminder of her unhappiness. They had been married for 8 years. For 7 of them, Nina had only one wish: to be free. "Mom called," Ruslan said without even looking at her. "She said you forgot to wish her a happy Saint Irene's Day." Nina sighed. Irina Borisovna, her mother-in-law, celebrated every holiday connected to her name and always scolded Nina for forgetting. Ruslan continued. "She also said she went to a fortune teller. The fortune teller said our marriage won't last much longer, that things will soon get better." At least the fortune teller got something right, Nina thought as she watched Ruslan wipe his mouth the same careful way his mother did. Irina Borisovna always treated Nina like someone temporary, a problem that would go away eventually. And Nina was ready to go. Just not in the way her mother-in-law expected. Nina worked as an accountant. Every evening she came home hoping for peace. But Ruslan always had complaints. The soup was too salty, the shirt not ironed well, or she was reading too long in bed. "Normal wives don't read in bed," he said. "Mom's right, you're kind of weird." Irina often came over uninvited, checking the corners for dust and criticizing Nina's cooking. "You need to cook with love," she'd say, trying Nina's borscht. "Yours has no taste." Ruslan would nod and ask his mom for more. The worst part was money. Nina earned more than Ruslan, but she still had to ask before spending. If she bought a book, saw a beautician, or wanted to visit a friend, Ruslan would say, "Where are you going?" "Mom says a good wife should ask first." That's normal. It was also normal for Irina to constantly hint about grandchildren. "I'm not getting any younger," she'd say. But Nina didn't want children. Not in a marriage like this. Why bring a child into a home filled with stress? The final straw came on Nina's birthday. She asked to celebrate alone with Ruslan at a restaurant. He agreed but brought his mother too. "We're a family," he said, sitting her at their table. His mother ordered the most expensive food and complained the whole time. When the cake came, she said loudly, "This isn't a birthday, it's a funeral." Look at her sour face. Nina stood up and left. She walked home in high heels, crying the whole way. Not because she was sad, but because she was angry at herself. How much longer could she take it? The next day she called a lawyer. The divorce was easier than she expected. Ruslan didn't even fight it. Maybe he was tired too, though he never said so. "Well, okay," Ruslan said when Nina told him she wanted a divorce. "Mom always said you weren't really one of us." His mother, Irina Borisovna, reacted with thinly hidden joy. The very next day, she was already on dating websites, looking at profiles of women. "Ruslan chick needs a good housewife," she said, showing pictures. "This one's a kindergarten teacher. Loves kids and bakes cakes. Just look at the photo." Surprisingly, the property division went smoothly. Nina didn't ask for their one-room apartment. It had been bought before the marriage with Irina Borisovna's money and was in Ruslan's name. Nina only took her clothes, books, and the money she had saved in her deposit account. It turned out she had saved more than she thought. Over the 8 years of marriage, she quietly put away small amounts. She didn't spend much on herself. That balance in her account felt like a symbol of her past life. Years of counting every penny. "You've got enough for a car," her friend Sveta said. "Or a down payment for a flat." But Nina didn't want a flat. She wanted a house. Her own house. A place where no one told her when to cook, what to read, or how to live. One day she found an ad online. House for sale near the Black Sea. 2 rooms, a porch, a small yard. Price negotiable. The pictures showed a tiny house with a worn roof and a messy yard. The land was small, like a handkerchief, but it was enough for her. The trip to the sea took all day. First a long bus ride on bumpy roads, then a local taxi. The village was quiet and peaceful. Just a few houses, one little store, a post office and a bus stop. The owner of the house, an older woman named Galina Stepanovna, met Nina at the gate. "The house is fine," she said. "Just needs a little care. My husband died 3 years ago. I can't manage alone anymore. My kids live in the city. They want me to move there." Nina walked through the rooms. 2 small ones, a kitchen with an old stove, and a porch that looked more like a shed. The yard was full of weeds, the fence leaned to one side, and the roof needed work. "Is the sea close?" Nina asked. 10 minutes by foot," Galina smiled. "The beach is nice, not crowded. Want to see?" They walked down a path between summer homes. The sea was calm and blue. No loud tourists, no beach cafes. Just pebbles, waves, and seagulls. "I'll take it," Nina said. Took a month to sort out the paperwork. She was busy running between her job, lawyers, and notaries. But every night she went to sleep thinking about her future. Her quiet house by the sea. Ruslan found out about the house by accident. Nina had left some documents at home. "You're really leaving?" he asked, surprised. "What about your job? Your life?" "I'll find a new job," she said. "As for life, it's just starting." Irina Borisovna, of course, was angry. "Look at her," she said. She took the money and ran to the sea. And she couldn't even help Ruslanchik buy a bigger apartment. On moving day, Nina packed everything into 3 cardboard boxes. Books, clothes, a few photos, and her favorite mug. That was all she had after 8 years of marriage. "Good luck," Ruslan said, helping carry the boxes. "And I'm sorry if I did something wrong." It was the first real apology she had ever heard from him. She arrived at the village after dark. The keys were under a flower pot, just like Galina Stepanovna had promised. Nina opened the door, turned on the light, and sat down on the only chair in the empty house. Silence. Finally, silence. The first 6 months passed in a blur. Nina spent every day fixing the house. She painted the walls, changed the plumbing, and repaired the porch. Local men helped her for a fair price. They didn't ask questions. "Running from the city?" asked her neighbor, Uncle Vitya, while helping her lay linoleum. "From it," Nina smiled. He nodded. Many in the village had run from something. The city, family trouble, even debts. The yard also needed work. Nina pulled weeds, planted flowers and vegetables. She learned to use a shovel and rake. Her hands got rough, her back hurt, but it was a good kind of tired. Tired from doing something for herself. She soon found a job too. A construction company in the regional center needed an accountant. The salary was lower than what Nina had earned in Moscow, but her living costs were also much lower now. She no longer had to cook fancy meals or buy expensive makeup just to look presentable. In the evenings, Nina sat on her porch with a book and a cup of tea. She could read as much as she wanted, sleep when she felt like it, and eat whatever she liked. No one told her when dinner had to be ready. No one criticized her for buying books. No one walked all over her patients anymore. After 6 months, the house had changed completely. The walls were freshly painted, the windows sparkled, and the garden bloomed with bright flowers like marigolds and cosmos. Nina even adopted a ginger cat from the shelter, a bold little guy named Marsik. He quickly claimed the porch as his kingdom. She kept in touch with her parents, her best friend Sveta, and a few old co-workers. Almost everyone asked the same thing. "Aren't you bored? Don't you feel lonely? Do you miss your old life?" But Nina didn't miss it. The only thing she regretted was the time she had wasted. In late October, Nina celebrated her birthday. She baked a cake, opened a bottle of wine, and sat outside listening to the sea. Marsik purred on her lap. The light glowed softly from the house, and the last asters danced in the breeze. 32 years old. And only the past 6 months felt like real life. The phone didn't ring. No message from Ruslan. No call from Irina Borisovna. Nina was actually glad. It meant the past had finally stayed in the past. But she was wrong. That Wednesday morning, Nina woke up earlier than usual, at 6:30 a.m. The sky outside was still tinted soft purple. Marsik meowed, reminding her it was breakfast time. She fed him, made tea, and stepped out onto the porch to breathe in the cool morning air. The sea was calm like a sheet of glass. Seagulls floated above the waves, searching for fish. She pulled on an old sweater and sat down in her favorite wicker chair. These peaceful mornings were her favorite. Quiet, slow, and all hers. In 6 months, she had learned to wake up without an alarm. Her body followed a healthy rhythm now. Early to bed, early to rise. Unlike in Moscow, where she had spent years suffering from insomnia next to a snoring Ruslan. Here she fell asleep as soon as her head hit the pillow. At exactly 8:30 a.m., her phone rang. It was an unfamiliar number, with a Moscow area code. She stared at the screen, unsure if she should answer. Her co-workers had her work number. Her parents always called at night. Who could it be? "Hello," she said, a little unsure. "Finally," snapped a voice she instantly recognized. "I've been calling for half an hour." Irina Borisovna. Nina's heart sank. Her stomach tightened. That voice brought back a flood of old feelings. Stress, pressure, fear. "Hello, Irina Borisovna," Nina said stiffly, her voice slipping back into the polite tone she used to use during the marriage. "Well, they said we wouldn't find you," her mother-in-law said, sounding pleased with herself. "Ruslanchik got your new number. You really went far, didn't you?" Nina said nothing. She suddenly remembered. Her phone number was on the divorce documents she had left at the apartment. Ruslan must have copied it. "Listen, Ninka," Irina Borisovna continued, using the old, overly familiar way of addressing her. During the marriage, she always called Nina by her full name and patronymic. This felt strangely personal. "Ruslanchik and I had a great idea," she said cheerfully. Nina noted to herself that they still acted like a unit, like Siamese twins. "We decided to spend the weekend at the sea," Irina Borisovna announced, as if she was doing Nina a huge favor. "And then I thought, why waste money on a hotel when Ninka has a house?" Nina froze in disbelief. "We have Ninka." Like she was a family asset, a summer cabin or a spare room they could use whenever they pleased. "Irina Borisovna, we're divorced," Nina started to say. "So what?" her mother-in-law cut her off. "We're not enemies. You're probably lonely out there. You'll be happy to have visitors. We already made plans, bought tickets. We're arriving Friday evening." Nina tried to respond, to object. "But I'm not ready for guests," she began. "My house is small, only 2 rooms," Nina said. "Oh, don't worry about that," Irina Borisovna replied quickly. "We're not picky. A sofa will be fine for us. Just make sure dinner's ready when we arrive. Ruslanchik misses your borscht. Even though it wasn't that great, maybe you've finally learned how to cook it." Borscht. The same borscht she always criticized. And now suddenly Ruslan missed it. Nina felt a bitter laugh rising. "And make some cutlets too," Irina went on, getting more excited. "Homemade ones, not the store-bought stuff. And dried fruit compote. Ruslanchik's stomach is delicate. He can't drink soda. Oh, and fresh sheets on the bed. We'll be tired. And clean the house well, of course." Nina listened to the stream of demands and felt something hot boiling inside. Not fear this time, but anger. Half a year of freedom. 6 peaceful months of doing what she wanted. And now the same old orders, as if nothing had changed. "Irina Borisovna," Nina said, her voice firm now. "I can't host you. I already have plans for the weekend." "What plans?" her mother-in-law snapped. "What could you possibly have going on in that little village?" "Watering cucumbers." "Don't be silly. We're family, even if it's former family. We'll arrive Friday at 7 p.m. The train gets in at 5. We'll figure out how to get there. It's all settled, don't argue." Oh, and if there's fresh fish for sale, buy some. Get something decent, not bony. Pike, perch, or catfish is fine. Then came the beep. She had hung up. Nina slowly set down the phone. Her hands were shaking, from anger or maybe the old fear. She wasn't sure. She walked to the window and looked out at the yard, where her chickens were pecking peacefully at grain by their little homemade feeder. She'd gotten them a month ago. Tiny hens and a proud rooster from an old village woman. She wanted fresh eggs and something gentle to care for. The chickens were simple, quiet, and easy to love. They laid eggs every morning and asked for nothing but food and clean water. The rooster was named Gennady, thanks to her neighbor Aunt Klava. He had a serious look and loved to wake up the whole area at 5 a.m. Gennady was colorful, with a big fluffy tail and a proud strut. If strange cats came too close, he would scream so loudly they'd run away in fear. I wish Irina Borisovna could meet Gennady, Nina thought with a smirk. She made herself strong coffee and sat down to think. What just happened? Her ex-mother-in-law was planning to show up at her house like it still belonged to her, without asking. She made plans, bought tickets, assigned Nina chores. All with the confidence of someone who still thought she was in charge. It was as if the divorce had never happened. As if Nina were still that quiet, obedient daughter-in-law. The audacity was almost funny. They hadn't spoken in 6 months. Irina had been happy about the divorce, even encouraged it. And now suddenly she's calling her family, and coming to stay. Nina imagined what Friday would look like. She'd cook borscht, fry cutlets, lay out fresh linens, smile politely, and listen to the same old criticism. Then they'd leave, and she'd be left with a pile of dirty dishes and a familiar feeling of shame. No, she said out loud. Not this time. That afternoon, during her lunch break, Nina went to the next village, where there was a small tourist center called Chaika. It wasn't fancy, but it was clean and cheap. The receptionist, a tired-looking young woman, looked up from her computer. We can offer a standard room for 2, she said. 3,000 per night. Breakfast included. I'll book it, said Nina. From Friday to Sunday. Name for the reservation. Nina paused. Should she use her name? Then Ruslan and his mother would know she sent them. So what? Belokoneva Nina Andreevna, she said. 50% prepayment, the woman added. Nina paid and took the tourist center's business card. Next, she stopped at a pet store in the district center. She had been thinking about getting a dog, for protection and for company. Marsik, her cat, was great, but a dog was something different. Cat is comfort. Dog is backup. The store owner, a chatty middle-aged man, came to help. Looking for a dog, he asked. What kind, for security or for companionship? For security, Nina said. But I don't want a mean one. Got just the thing, he nodded. A mutt, about 1.5 years old, came from a shelter. His name's Barbos. Simple name, great dog. Big, loud but sweet. Good with kids, doesn't bother cats. Only barks a lot, that's the only thing. And how much? Nina asked. But if strangers come into the yard, the neighbors will notice. But no thief will dare come in. Let me see him. Barbos was just what she needed. Huge, shaggy, with kind eyes and ready to lick anyone's face. When they brought him in, he wagged his tail excitedly and stood up on his back legs to say hello. You see. He already loves you, the man laughed. That's a good sign. When can I take him? Nina asked. Right now. All the documents are ready and he has all his vaccines. It's just 1,000 rubles to cover the shelter stay. Nina paid and arranged for Barbos to be delivered the next evening. On the way home, she stopped to buy everything for the dog. Bowls, a leash, and a kennel. That evening, she sat on the porch planning the next day. She needed to go to the market to buy a big chicken cage, set it up, bring Barbos home, and leave a note for the guests. The note was short. Welcome to the Chaika Tourist Center. Address: Solnechny Settlement, Morskaya Street, 15. Have a nice rest at your own expense. N. Nina smiled at what she wrote but thought the last line sounded too sarcastic. She changed it to, "Welcome to the Chaika Tourist Center. Address: Solnechny Settlement, Morskaya Street, 15. Have a nice rest." The next day after work, she went to the market and bought a big bird cage, the kind used to carry chickens. She set it up right by the front porch so no one could miss it. Then she moved all her chickens and Gennady, the rooster, into the new cage. The birds didn't mind the move. The cage was big and they had food and water. Gennady even seemed happy. It gave him a better view of the yard. Barbos arrived at 7 p.m. The big dog jumped out of the car and immediately started exploring. He sniffed around the house, looked into the shed, and met Marsik the cat. Marsik hissed and arched his back, but Barbos just barked playfully and wagged his tail. "Good dog," said the driver. "He's smart. He'll settle in fast." They placed the kennel near the chicken cage so Barbos could guard both the house and the birds. He explored every corner, marked the fence, then lay by the door to watch the yard. That night, Nina couldn't sleep. Tomorrow Ruslan and his mother would arrive. They'd see the locked door, the barking dog, the note, and the chickens in a cage. What would they think? What would they say? She reminded herself, "I don't care what they say. I don't owe them anything." But her heart still beat faster than usual. On Friday morning, Nina felt nervous. She couldn't focus at work and kept checking the time. The train arrived at 5 p.m. That meant they'd reach the village by 7 o'clock, if they found a ride. At 4 p.m., she told her boss she felt sick and left work. On the bus, she fidgeted with her bag. She had planned everything but still felt anxious. At home, she fed the animals, locked the door with every lock, and sat down to wait for the taxi. Barbos felt her stress and paced the yard. Even the chickens were restless. Gennady stretched his neck, listening for something. The taxi came at 6:30. Nina grabbed her small bag, checked the note one last time and got in the car. "To the Chaika Tourist Center," she said. "What, can't stay at home?" the driver joked. "Running away from guests," Nina replied honestly. The driver nodded. "I get it. Relatives can be tough sometimes." At the tourist center, the same tired-looking receptionist welcomed her. "And you booked a room yesterday. Come in, I'll show you," the receptionist said. The room was simple but clean. 2 beds, a table, a TV, and a fridge. You could even see the sea from the window. Nina sat down in a chair with a book and waited. At exactly 7 a.m., her phone rang. She looked at the screen. It was Ruslan. Nina stared at it for a moment, then answered. "Nina," she said. Her ex-husband's voice sounded confused. "What the hell? We're at your house, and it's all locked up." In the background, she could hear Barbos barking loudly and the chickens clucking. Gennady the rooster was crowing so loud. The whole village probably heard him. "Hello, Ruslan," Nina said calmly. "How did you get there?" "What do you mean, how? We barely made it. The taxi driver overcharged us. Then we got to your house and it's locked. There's a note on the door and a huge dog barking like crazy." "Did you read the note?" Nina asked, trying not to laugh. "We read it. What's this nonsense? What tourist center? We came to visit you." "Ruslan, I told your mother on the phone I had plans this weekend." "What plans?" she heard his mother yell in the background. She had clearly grabbed the phone. "Nina, what kind of joke is this? Open the door right now." "I'm not home," Nina said calmly. "Like I said, I have weekend plans." "Where did that dog come from?" the mother-in-law shouted. "And what's with the chickens?" Just then, Barbos barked even louder and Gennady crowed again. The chickens made such a racket, it was hard to hear anything. "What?" Nina asked, though she heard everything. "I said get rid of the dog," the mother-in-law yelled. "And those stupid chickens. We can't even get inside." "Why do you need to get inside?" Nina asked. "I'm staying at the tourist center. It's a nice place. Breakfast is included." "What tourist center?" her mother-in-law shouted. "We came to see you. You're supposed to host us. Why do I owe you anything? Nina said, her voice getting firm. Because we're family. We were family, Nina corrected. 6 months ago. Now we're strangers. And I didn't invite anyone. Nina, come on, Ruslan said, taking the phone back. We bought tickets, we spent money. You spent money without asking me, she reminded him. And I told you I wasn't ready for guests. What does it matter if you're ready or not? Just let us sleep on the sofa, cook something, and that's it. That was exactly the kind of thinking Nina had left behind. Her feelings never mattered. The food's better at the tourist center, she said. And the sofas too. The address is on the note. Are you serious? Ruslan shouted. We came to your house. My house is my castle, Nina said. And castles don't have to let intruders in. What intruders? We're your relatives. No, your former relatives. And uninvited guests. There was a pause. Then the mother-in-law grabbed the phone again. Nina, she yelled, furious. Come here and open the door. I'm not standing outside all weekend. And I'm not ruining my weekend, Nina replied. The tourist center is a 10-minute walk. Or you can go back to Moscow. You, the mother-in-law sputtered. Ungrateful. Shameless. After everything we did for you. What exactly did you do? Nina asked. You insulted me for 8 years, judged everything I did. You let Ruslan tell me I couldn't even buy books. That's what you call help. We raised you. Made you a proper wife. Well, Nina said with a grin. Looks like you failed. Have a nice vacation. She hung up and turned off her phone. Half an hour later, someone named Belokoneva Ruslan Igorevich booked a room at the tourist center. The administrator came up to Nina. Your husband is here. He said you had a fight and asked for a separate room. Ex-husband, Nina corrected her. And everything's fine. I understand, the girl smiled. It happens. We don't get involved in family drama. Nina went back to her book. It was getting dark. The sea made a calming sound. She felt strange, strong, free, and maybe a little sad. It made sense that Nina felt proud. For the first time in her life, she stood up to Irina Borisovna and didn't let her boss her around. But at the same time she felt a bit sad, because now the bridge between them was truly burned. On Saturday morning, Nina slept in. She sat on the balcony for a long time, sipping coffee and watching the sea. Downstairs at the tourist center's restaurant, Ruslan and his mom were having breakfast. Nina saw Irina Borisovna angrily waving her hands at the waitress, clearly unhappy with the service. To avoid running into them, Nina slipped out through the back door and went to the beach. There weren't many people around, just a few tourists and local families. She swam, laid in the sun, and only went home around noon. Her dog Barbos greeted her with happy barks. Her cat Marsik purred, and the chickens were dozing in their pen. Gennady the rooster strutted around like a boss. Everything was peaceful. Nina looked at the fence and noticed some scratches, signs that someone had tried to climb over. Probably Irina Borisovna the night before. But Barbos had been on guard, and no one got through. She fed the animals, watered her garden, and sat on the porch with a book. Life in the village went on as usual. Neighbors were gardening, kids were playing nearby, and a tractor rumbled in the distance. Nina! Her neighbor Aunt Klava called out over the fence. What was that circus yesterday? The dog barked all night, and someone was yelling at your gate. Some guests showed up, Nina said. Uninvited. I figured, said Aunt Klava with a sly smile. You got a big dog, put the chickens away. You were ready. I was, Nina nodded. Good for you, the neighbor said. Don't let people walk all over you. If you let them in once, they'll start acting like they own the place. That evening, Nina sat in her garden, thinking about everything. For the first time she put herself first. She didn't sacrifice her peace just to avoid upsetting people who never cared about her feelings. Her phone stayed silent. Maybe Ruslan and his mother realized they couldn't pressure her anymore. Or maybe they had no money left to call. Hotels aren't cheap. On Sunday morning, Nina went to the store and saw them at the bus stop. Ruslan looked tired. Irina Borisovna was furious, hissing something at him and waving her arms. He nodded silently. When they saw Nina, Irina stopped talking and just glared. But she didn't come closer. Maybe yesterday's events taught her something. "Nina," Ruslan called out. "Can we talk?" She walked up, but kept her distance from his mother. "Go ahead," she said. Ruslan hesitated. "We're not enemies." "Why so harsh?" "Then why did you come without asking?" Nina asked calmly. "It was Mom's idea," he said, but stopped when he saw her face. "She decided and you agreed." "Like always," she said. "Well, yeah. I thought you'd be happy to see us." Nina looked at him in disbelief. "After everything that happened." "Ruslan," she said quietly. "We're divorced. I moved 2,000 kilometers away to start fresh. What did you think would happen?" "I don't know. Maybe you were lonely." "I'm not," Nina replied. "I'm doing well." Just then the bus arrived. Ruslan helped his mom with her bags and got on. Irina Borisovna leaned toward the window and yelled something, but the engine noise covered her words. Judging by her face, it wasn't anything nice. The bus drove off in a cloud of dust. Nina stood there watching. She felt something strange, relief but also sadness. The fight had to happen, but it still hurt to break ties with people who once felt like family. Or were they ever really family? Maybe they just lived under the same roof, tolerating each other. Back home, Barbos greeted her joyfully. He ran around, wagging his tail. Gennady strutted around proudly, like he was the king of the yard. Nina let the chickens out to walk freely. They clucked happily and searched the ground for worms. Barbos watched them with interest but didn't chase them. He already knew they were part of the family. That evening, Nina sat on her porch and thought about the weekend. Everything had gone as planned. Ruslan and his mother learned a lesson they wouldn't forget. Nina was no longer someone they could control. She knew Irina Borisovna wasn't the type to give up easily. She might come up with new plans to get back at her. But Nina wasn't worried. She lived in her own house, on her own land, 2,000 kilometers away. It wouldn't be easy to bother her now. At 10 p.m. her phone rang. Unknown number. "Nina," said a voice. It was Ruslan. "It's me. We're back home." "So what?" Nina asked coldly. "Nothing. Just wanted to say, my mother's still really angry. She hasn't calmed down." "Those are her problems." "Nina, why are you acting like this? You could have just welcomed us. We would have stayed the night and left. Why all the drama with the dog and chickens?" "Because I didn't invite you," Nina said calmly. "And I don't have to let in people I didn't invite. We're not strangers." "Yes, you are," she cut in. "You're like strangers now. And tell your mother. This kind of trick won't work again." Then she added, "That's it, Ruslan. Don't call me again." She turned off her phone and didn't answer any more calls. By midnight the house was quiet. Barbos lay in his kennel, Marsik the cat rested on the porch, and the chickens went to sleep in their coop. Nina couldn't fall asleep right away. Too many feelings after everything. But when she finally slept, it was peaceful. For the first time in 8 years she felt truly calm. The next weeks were quiet and lovely. Nina went to work, tended to her garden, and read on the porch in the evenings. Barbos quickly became a perfect guard dog. Friendly in the daytime, alert at night. The chickens settled in too, laying eggs regularly. Gennady, the rooster, woke up the whole village every morning with his loud crowing. "You welcomed them just right," laughed the neighbor Aunt Klava. "Everyone's talking about how your dog barked. They probably thought they could just move in like it was their house." Nina smiled. The story of the unwanted visitors became a little village legend, and most people clearly supported her. But peace didn't last. A month after their visit, the calls began. The first one came from a man she didn't know. "Hello, this is the new house real estate agency. We got a request to value your house for sale. What request? Nina asked, surprised. I didn't request anything. It was submitted by Irina Borisovna Belokoneva. She said she co-owns the house. She lied, Nina said coldly. This house is mine. I have all the papers. I'm not selling anything. The man apologized. But a week later, another agency called. Then another. Irina Borisovna was calling all the agencies around, pretending she owned Nina's house. What nonsense is this? Nina complained to another agent. What does my ex-mother-in-law have to do with my house? Well, the agent said slowly, she told us the house was bought with family money. She said she has rights to it. No, it was bought with my money after my divorce, Nina said firmly. No one else owns it. The calls stopped, but the letters started. First, a letter from the tax office. Someone reported Nina for hiding rental income. She had to go to the district center, show all her documents and explain everything. Strange, the inspector said. Someone said you rent your home to tourists and don't pay taxes. But we found no proof. Because I don't rent to anyone, Nina sighed. I live here alone. Then came a letter from the vet service. Someone reported that she kept chickens in dirty conditions and sold eggs illegally. A health inspector came, checked the coop and spoke to neighbors. Everything looks fine, said the vet. The chickens are healthy, and we see no signs of egg sales. I keep eggs for myself, Nina added. Sometimes I give some to neighbors. Then it's okay. But it didn't stop. A month later the fire department came. Then someone from the environmental office complained about soil pollution. Every time, Nina had to leave work, meet inspectors, and explain the truth. Who keeps reporting you? Asked the local police officer after someone even filed a noise complaint. It's my ex-mother-in-law, Nina said honestly. We argued. He shook his head. Sometimes family is worse than enemies. By the end of summer, Nina was tired of all the inspections. Irina Borisovna was clearly trying to make her life miserable, step by step. So Nina took action. She got 2 more dogs, young German shepherds, from the same shelter. Now she had Barbos, Rex, and Mukhtar in her yard. Together they made a loud, scary team. When strangers came near, their barking could be heard a mile away. She also expanded her chicken coop. 10 more hens and a second rooster, named Valerie, who was even louder than Gennady. Then she planted a line of hawthorn bushes along the fence. They looked small now, but in a few years they'd grow into a thick, thorny wall. Are you building a fortress? Asked Uncle Vitya, her neighbor, watching her work. I'm protecting myself, Nina replied. Good, he nodded. Your home is your castle. By fall the complaints finally stopped. It seemed the local offices had stopped listening to Irina Borisovna. But then postcards began arriving. The first came for New Year's. It had a snowy scene on the front, and inside, in clumsy handwriting, it said, Happy New Year. May it bring you what you deserve. But the way it was written, what you deserve, sounded more like a threat than a kind wish. Later a birthday card arrived too. It had flowers on the front and read, Wishing you health and a long life. All alone. Smiley face. For Women's Day in March, Nina received a card with kittens. It said, May you have many pets. They don't betray you like people do. Every card was like a hidden insult. Each one had a fake wish, full of poison. First Nina got angry. Then she got used to it. She began replying with photos of her garden. Flower beds blooming in spring, ripe tomatoes in summer, bright asters in autumn. Each picture had a short caption like, Life is beautiful or, Everything grows and blooms. This strange postcard war went on for years. Irina Borisovna kept sending her bitter little cards. Nina replied with cheerful garden photos. It was like a battle from a distance. Each side trying to show they were better off. In the 5th year after the divorce, Nina got a particularly nasty card for March 8th. Happy Women's Day to a single woman. Enjoy your freedom, with chickens and dogs. Nina sent back a photo of herself in a blooming garden, hugging barbos and laughing. Her caption said, "Happiness doesn't depend on other people's opinions." But everything changed in the 8th year. One day, Nina received a wedding invitation. It was addressed to Belokoneva. No dear or beloved. It was from Ruslan. He was getting married. The bride's name was Oksana. She was 24 and worked at a kindergarten. Exactly the kind of girl Irina Borisovna had always wanted for her son. Young, gentle, good with kids. Nina stared at the invite. Why did they send it? To make her jealous. To pretend they were polite. Of course she didn't go. But she found out all the details from friends. The wedding was big and loud. Irina Borisovna was overjoyed. She loved her new daughter-in-law right away. Oksana was quiet, obedient, and happy to follow instructions. At the wedding, one socialite friend told Nina on the phone, "Your ex-mother-in-law told everyone what a terrible wife you were. She said you took Ruslan's property and ran off to the sea with your riches." "Riches?" Nina laughed. "You mean the house I built? It's just 1 floor taller than a person." "She says you got rich from tourists," the friend continued. "That you rent your dacha and make tons of money." Nina shook her head. Clearly, Irina Borisovna lived in her own fantasy world. A melodrama where Nina was the evil ex-wife. But the most interesting part came a year later. It was Sveta who called again. "Do you know what your ex is doing?" she asked. "He married that girl, but he still goes to his mom's house for lunch every day. The wife sits at home while he chats with Irina Borisovna. And the wife doesn't mind?" Nina asked. "She's quiet for now. But neighbors say she's getting tired of it." There was already a fight. Oksana told him to stop going to his mother's every evening. "So what did Ruslan do?" "Well," Sveta said, "Mommy told him if he picks his wife over her, he'll lose his apartment. It's still in her name." Nina chuckled. Nothing had changed. Ruslan was still stuck between 2 women. Still unable to make a choice for himself. "I think he's heading for another divorce," Sveta guessed. "Oksana is young, she won't put up with this forever." She was right. A year and a half later, Sveta called again. "That's it, they're divorced." Oksana finally gave up and filed the papers. She said she married a man, but ended up with a second mother-in-law. "And Irina Borisovna?" Nina asked. "Happy as ever. She says Oksana wasn't right either. Now she's already looking for a new one." Nina put her phone down and walked into her garden. It had been 10 years since she left that toxic world. 10 years of freedom, peace, and living life on her own terms. Her house had grown. She added an attic and a winter greenhouse. She bought the abandoned dacha next door. The garden was full of fruit and vegetables. The kitchen had fresh eggs every day. Her dog family had grown too. She now had 5 dogs, adding 2 shelter mutts to her 3 shepherds. Her chicken flock had doubled. 24 hens and 3 proud roosters. The hawthorn hedge she planted long ago was now a thick thorny wall. "A real fortress," said Uncle Vitya. "Beautiful and strong." Nina had changed her job too. Now she worked from home, doing accounting for a few small business owners. She worked at her own pace. There was enough money for everything. Feeding the animals, fixing up the house, and even taking short trips. She wasn't in a hurry to find a new relationship. After spending 8 years married to Ruslan, she wanted to live for herself, with no compromises or pressure from others. Of course, there were a few men who showed interest. The local vet was friendly, and a teacher from a nearby village sometimes came to visit. But Nina wasn't looking for anything serious. "Don't you get lonely?" Anklava once asked. "Not at all," Nina said honestly. "I have too much to do to feel lonely." And that was true. Mornings were for computer work. During the day she did house chores. In the evenings she read books or did crafts. Weekends were for the garden, the beach, or exploring nearby places. Her life was calm and steady. Sometimes she thought about her old life, Constant stress, fights, and always having to walk on eggshells. Every time she remembered, she was thankful for the choice she made 10 years ago. Postcards from her ex-mother-in-law, Irina Borisovna, still came. But now they sounded lonelier. Happy New Year. At least someone has their own home. Happy Women's Day. Must be nice to live without problems. Happy birthday. I envy your peace. There was less anger now. More sadness. After Ruslan's second divorce, he finally moved out of his mother's house. Maybe he had enough of being controlled too. Nina still replied with pictures of her garden. But now she added kind messages like, I wish everyone happiness. May everyone have a peaceful home. 12 years after the divorce, the last postcard came. It was short, almost like a business note. Ruslan is getting married again. His new wife is divorced and has a child. Maybe she can fix him. There was a tired tone in it. Irina Borisovna finally seemed to understand that her son wasn't the man she thought he was. All her efforts to find him a perfect wife had failed. Nina sent a final postcard back. For the first time in all these years, just this. I wish everyone happiness and peace. N. No more letters came after that. Sometimes Nina wondered what life would have been like if she hadn't left. She would probably still be cooking borscht on a schedule, taking orders from her mother-in-law, and being blamed for spending money. Or maybe she wouldn't have lasted. Maybe her nerves would have broken down. Now she was 52. Her hair was gray, her hands rough from work, and her face had wrinkles. But she was happy. Really happy. She had her own house. No one could take it away. She had her own garden, where only what she wanted grew. She had her own animals, who welcomed her every day with wagging tails and purring. She had a job that gave her both money and joy. But most importantly, she had freedom. Freedom to wake up when she wanted, eat what she liked, read any book, talk to whoever she chose. She had paid for this freedom with 8 hard years of a bad marriage and leaving her old life behind. People sometimes asked if she regretted not having a family or children. Nina would just smile and say, family isn't a stamp in your passport or a shared address. Family is people who love you for who you are. Her family now was a 3-colored cat named Marussia, a once male cat named Marsik, 5 loyal dogs, 20 hens, 3 roosters, and kind neighbors who didn't give her advice she didn't ask for. As for kids, Nina knew her kind of motherly love was different. She didn't have children of her own, but she had rescued a dozen shelter animals, helped neighbor teens with school, hired a young single mom when no one else would. That was also a way to care for the future. That evening, Nina sat on her porch watching the sun set over the sea. Marussia purred by her side. Chickens clucked in the yard. The dogs were napping under the apple tree. It was peaceful, quiet, perfect. Then the phone rang, breaking the silence. It was an unknown number. Nina looked at the screen for a long time, then picked up. A young woman's voice spoke. Nina Andreevna. This is Oksana, Ruslan's ex-wife. Can I talk to you? The girl asked. Nina raised her eyebrows. Ruslan's second wife. She was surprised but also curious. I'm listening, Nina said. I wanted to meet you, to understand how you did it, the girl said nervously. What do you mean? How did you decide to leave him? Oksana asked quickly. I'm in the same situation you were. Ruslan got married again, but nothing has changed. He's still a mama's boy, and his mother, she's awful. Nina smiled. So, Irina Borisovna is still the same. What do you want from me? Nina asked gently. I want advice, Oksana said. How do I find the strength to leave this nightmare? I'm scared. I don't want to be alone. I don't know if I can handle it. Nina looked at her calmly. Handle what? That no one will treat you like dirt anymore. That you won't have to cook for someone who doesn't appreciate it. That you won't have to listen to insults from your mother-in-law. But how do you live alone? How do you stop being afraid? It's only scary at first, Nina said honestly. Then you realize that being alone is better than being with the wrong person. It's better to be alone and happy than in a relationship and miserable. They spoke for over an hour. Oksana told her everything, how she felt humiliated, controlled, and powerless. It was the same story, almost exactly like Nina's. "Leave," Nina said at the end. "Don't waste years fighting a losing battle. Ruslan won't change. Neither will his mother. You're still young. You have your whole life ahead of you. What if I regret it later?" Oksana asked. "Regret what?" Nina replied. "Saving your peace of mind. Keeping your health. Trust me, you'll only regret the time you wasted." 6 months later, Oksana sent a message. "Thanks for the advice. Filed for divorce. It's scary, but I already feel like I can breathe again." Nina smiled. At least someone avoided making the same mistake she did. Sometimes the best thing you can do is walk away and start over, instead of trying to fix what can't be fixed. Now, at 52, Nina understood it clearly. That one weekend 12 years ago when everything exploded was actually the beginning of her real life. The first time she stood up for herself. The first time she said no to people who tried to control her. The moment she realized her voice mattered. Of course, Irina Borisovna never forgave her. Never forgave Nina for daring to live her own way. But that wasn't Nina's problem anymore. That was the problem of a woman who never learned to let go, and never understood that real happiness can't be built on someone else's pain. Nina had everything she wanted now. Her own house, her garden, her animals, and most importantly, her freedom. Freedom to be herself. The sun was setting, coloring the sky red. The dogs walked toward their bowls. The chickens went into their coop. Marussia curled up on a soft pillow. Nina stood up and went inside. Tomorrow would bring another day, full of small joys and simple work. And that was exactly the life she wanted. She was truly happy.